Hello all, and thank you for listening in today on my final phase of my course project in FS 475. Once again, my project deals with reducing my daily sugar intake. So first I will go over the define phase of my project to give an overview of what that entailed. Some background information on my project is really just the fact that I am a student athlete here at the university, so I do require optimal nutrition to perform well, both in school and during my sport, which is diving. So my eating habits definitely influence my academic, athletic, and social performance very heavily, so I really want to make sure that I carefully watch what I consume so I can perform at my best. Eating too much sugar does lead to lethargic behavior, acne breakouts, sugar crashes, etc. All symptoms that I do not want to experience as an athlete. Unfortunately, before I started this project, most days I was eating more sugar than I needed, but it actually ended up working out well because when I started this course, I was easily able to think of this as an idea for an improvement project. So the problem statement that really entails the whole project is stated here. I'm consuming more sugar than I'd like to on a daily basis and in very irregular amounts. So the scope of the project includes what I have listed below here once again. Added and naturally occurring sugars are what I'm tracking. I'm not going to include complex carbs, things like that. I did use an app on my phone each day to track my total sugar consumption. I basically would just put in the food that I ate that day and it would categorize my macronutrients for me. So the goal with this project is to reduce my daily sugar intake to about 20 grams per day. That is the goal here, and regulate that daily amount to a consistent level using Six Sigma methodology. I came up with 20 grams because in my mind that seemed like a good balance of what was healthy for me in terms of how I'd be getting enough nutrition and making sure I was eating enough calories for my high energy diet and high energy lifestyle, while also making sure I wasn't consuming too much sugar and causing those symptoms. So I'll enter the measure phase now, and this does include me gathering baseline data. So I started gathering that data on September 12th and ended on October 5th. Here I have listed the amount of sugar I was eating each day. There's a large range here, meaning it was pretty irregular from day to day. Also, that mean and median were much higher than I would like it to be, as you can clearly see with that 44 gram amount. So to display this in a different way, I wanted to see how my data would be distributed around that mean. So I automatically thought of a histogram as a great way to display that. So I do have a lot of skewing to the right, but most of my data is pretty centralized, which was good, but I did want to reduce that skewing a little bit. The second tool I chose was a control chart. This also came easily to mind because it showed the variation from day to day and the trend that was happening from day to day. And so I can see where I have out of control points, bad trends, things that need to be changed and adjusted in order to really reach my goal in this project. So as you can see, I do already have 2 points here that are close to those upper spec limits, upper control limits. So I want to be able to fix those when I enter that measure phase, but it is nice to use this as a tool to be able to see those. The third tool that I chose was a bar chart. I wanted to have another way to display my data to be able to figure out what the root cause was for my total sugar intake and why it was so high. So I grouped my data into days of the week and the averages of sugar that I was consuming on those days, and seeing if there was a correlation between that day of the week and how much I was eating. As you can see, Fridays and Saturdays have more sugar on average than the other days of the week, meaning that I most likely am treating myself or getting a little bit lazier on the weekends where I'm eating more sugar, not really watching my diet as closely, so that was a good tool to use as well. I'll enter that Analyze Improve phase now and discuss the results I got from this phase. So the first thing I wanted to do was make sure that I knew what was causing my overconsumption of sugar so I could come up with a plan to improve it. The fishbone diagram really worked well for my project because I was able to take every single component that went into the process of eating sugar and why I was eating too much and be able to break it down and see which ones contributed the most to that issue. So, of course, every single breakdown here is important. Obviously, the environment is important. The measurements itself is important too, but what I found really was the root cause here was just not being mindful in planning my food for the day, and that actually kind of correlates into a lot of these pieces here, and that really was what caused most of my overconsumption of sugar, as you'll see here in a couple minutes. The second tool I used was my 5 whys breakdown. So I was able to start from an overarching question, why am I eating too much sugar? And just keep asking myself that question until I got to something that I really couldn't ask why anymore. And I realized that was another root cause. So it was 2 different approaches here that ended up helping me figure out what my root causes were. So I did deduce it down to I use sugar as a form of self-reward, and that I do not budget my time well enough throughout the day to be able to prepare food for myself. So that means I tend to binge eat or purchase unhealthy food on the go. So knowing that these are my root causes, I was able to come up with some improvements. I began packing food for each day to make sure that I was staying on track with my goals, and I also chose to use an alternative method of self-reward after a long day, a long week. Rather than grabbing a sugary coffee, I would grab an Americano. Rather than reaching for a cookie, I would watch a couple episodes of my favorite TV show. So with these improvements in place, I did track a couple more weeks worth of data, and I did see great improvements here just right off the bat. The range is a lot smaller. That mean is much closer to my target amount of 20 grams. So this was a great thing to see here. And so with this, I can see that my data is a lot more normally distributed. So the histogram worked well again here. And the quality control charts did show a lot better results. I do have a couple points here that do approach an out-of-control trend, but I do know exactly why they're there. This was my birthday right here. This is why this point is out of range too, so with that in mind, I knew that this was a point I can disregard. I know what the cause is for that lack of control. Everything else looks pretty good, so I'm very happy with the results there. The bar chart also shows a lot of good improvement too, and it does look like Saturday is still a day where I tend to have a slightly higher average, but everything is a lot more regular. I don't see the discrepancy that I saw with the first set of data. I chose to use an ANOVA to compare the 2 sets of data. There was a big difference, as you can see here, between my 2 sets, so that was a great thing to see. For the final phase, I just collected some more data, tracked my habits for those. I did have a very large range here. My median and mean went up for my total improvement, and I know exactly why, because Thanksgiving was during this phase, so that's something I was easily able to identify, which, as you can see here, everything's a lot more normally distributed except for that one day, which is totally fine. As you can see in my control chart, that point is also there, and the points leading up to it, since that was Thanksgiving break. So I did revise my control chart, so those points weren't included, and my total improved data is very nice and very clean, and I'm very happy with the results. The average is 28.8 grams, which is right where I want to be. And the bar chart, as you can see, was skewed quite a bit by that one day, bringing up the average so much. So I really can't consider this one to accurately display that, but regardless of Thursday not being included, everything is pretty regular. I don't see too much of a difference. I'm very happy with the results there. So from this project, I did learn how to use Six Sigma. I was able to take a look at what's causing an issue and really think consciously about those issues. That was a really great skill that I took from this. Some further suggestions I could use for improvement would be creating a grocery list and eating out less. Those would be two things I could incorporate in the future. But in the meantime, thank you so much for this opportunity, and if you have any questions, let me know.